He was living in our crawl space. Take caution reading the story if you have scopophobia. My experience might trigger paranoid thoughts. Stay safe. I have a phobia that goes by a few names. Scopophobia, ophthalmophobia, the fear of being watched. I have this weird compulsion whenever I see a doorway, a window, or virtually any surface that I believe someone could hide behind. I imagine a face peering out at me, staring. I imagine what I would do. What could I do? You will soon find out why I have this phobia. On to the story. I will try my best to remember all of the details, but my mind was repressed a lot of it. Around June of 2016, my mother and I were living in a small apartment. There was no basement or attic, obviously, but there was one tiny crawl space on the closest floor to my bedroom. I never looked in it. I suppose some people would be overwhelmed with curiosity, but my mind had already imagined all the worst scenarios. I decided to leave whatever dead bodies and ghosts were down there for whoever rented after us. It was a nice apartment. Small, but perfect for the two of us. We lived there a few peaceful months, until the noises started. It was nothing extreme, just the odd bump in the night, a particularly scratching sound. My mom just brushed it off as rats in the walls. As long as they stayed in there, I got no reason to get rid of them. A week or two later, I had already grown used to the noises. It became almost comforting in a way. After all, I never really liked silence. That is, until I awoke one night to a different noise, a rolling sound, eerily similar to the sound my closet made when I opened it. I peeked my eyes open and looked over, but I couldn't make out anything in the darkness. Now that maybe I saw something move, but I was well aware of how the mind plays tricks on you in the dark. There was only one way to find out. I turned on my lamp. I feel like crying just writing this out. It's been almost a year since I've had to recall this night. When I turned on the light, I expected to just see a closet full of coats, but what I saw was much, much worse. It was an eye. Not just an eye, but the entire half of someone's face, barely visible in the tiny crack he had opened. He didn't even react to being caught. No smile, no fear, just watching. My heart has never beat faster than that night. I wished I screamed or maced him or anything, but I just stared back, frozen in time, until I couldn't hold it in anymore. I began sobbing loudly. I think I tried to say something along the lines of, "What do you want?" But it was garbled by my crying. He opened the door more. I could now see his entire body, which I don't care to describe, as I've spent 2 years long trying to forget that face. Shh. I lost my breath at that. Hearing him made it real. I couldn't pretend those some fucked up hallucinations anymore. At this, I sat up and pressed my back against the wall. "It's okay," he said. He said it so cheerfully. It gave me chills to remember it. This is when I finally had the courage to run out of the room. This creep knew my name. My fucking name. He said it. My mom, still half asleep while she called the police, thought I had imagined it, of course. By the time the police got there, he was already long gone. All that was left of him was that damn crawl space. I still never looked inside. And though writing this now, I kinda wish I did. Having some sort of proof of this would, I don't know, comfort me. Because at least you would know. I'm not crazy. Apparently, he had been living in there for how long, I don't know. But the officers who first arrived on the scene said there were tally marks inside the crawl space. I didn't want to know how many. I didn't want to know whether he was marking days or weeks. I just wanted to leave that fucking apartment, and we did. The police never found him, not for certain. They thought they found a homeless man who matched his description, but he was apparently unresponsive. I've always thought they didn't take it all that seriously. They just thought he was a squatter. Even after I told them that he knew my name, they thought that given how long he had seemingly been squatting, he had probably just heard my name through the floorboards. Since that night, he has been the face I always see when there's an open door or closet. It's grown more distorted as time goes on, but I can always make out a part of his pursed lips, as if he's still shushing me, even now. It's gotten easier with time, but I don't think it will ever leave me completely anyways. I guess we didn't actually have rats. Get ready to die, little kid. This happened just under 2 years ago, in June 2015. Bored and with nothing else to do, my friends and I decided to go one of those pop-up fairs that come every year for about a week. It was really small, with only a couple rides that we actually wanted to go on, one of which was the ride where you stand up, are strapped in, and hold on to the metal bars at the side of you, and then spins in a circle, tipping you every which way. I had never been on one of those rides before, so I wanted to take the opportunity to go on it. I paid my money and waited on the ramp for one of my friends, we'll call her Lucy, to pay and come with me. However, as she got to the front of the queue, she suddenly stepped to the side and shouted, "Hey, I've got a weird feeling. I'm going on the waltzers." Confused, I replied an elongated "okay" and head up onto the ride on my own. Sure, I was confused, but I definitely wasn't unfazed. So I stand there where the ride assistant tells me to and wait. It starts to fill up, and 3 boys around 6 or 7 years older than me, I was 12 at the time, stand by me. 2 at one side, 1 on the other. Weird, I think, since there are multiple places where they could have stood together. The boys start messing around with their seatbelts. Eventually, one of them manages to take it off. He nudges me. "See that, kiddo? It's off." He proceeds to do a really creepy laugh, like you see in the movies. Truly creeped out, I just stand there, not reacting to his gesture, and trying not to think about his intentions. Then he starts fiddling with my seatbelt. I lean away from him, idiotically thinking this would bring the seatbelt out of his reach. Of course, the seatbelt stayed where it was. He looks up at me, smiles, and says, "Ha, ha, ha," as if to say, "keep still." Again, I don't react and just stand there until I feel my seatbelt sliding against my skin. He managed to take it off. In a math scramble, pulling toggles and pushing fabric against fabric, I lock my seatbelt back in place. It really isn't a strong seatbelt. It could easily break. Thoughts of such a nature rushed through my head. I was distracted by the seatbelt remover person. A very snazzy name, I know. "You know, there won't be enough time for putting your seatbelt back on when you're spinning around, possibly falling into the motors." He laughed again. "Get ready to die, little kid." At the same time as saying the last sentence, he began unbuckling my seatbelt once again. I presumed, as most of you are reading this, he was having some weird joke. That was until I stared up at him, his lanky body towering over me, his vacant eyes staring at my chubby, stocky physique. I help him on his mission to undo the seatbelt. Click. I run to the exit of the ride, intending to reenact the scene of the Olympic hurdles. Of course, it's much harder to hurdle than it looks, so I do an ever-classic one leg over, the other on the other side, and roll off the gate of the ride. I was free. I caught my friends on a waltzer car and hopped on it with them before it started spinning. It wasn't until I told them what happened when I realized what would have happened if the seatbelt was taken off. The ride I had seen from watching in the queue and from around the fair wasn't going fast enough to provide the force to keep you at the edge. If I had fallen towards the center of the ride, I would have almost certainly been thrown into the mechanics. The protective fence was only waist high, so I would have been flipped over the fence. I truly believe that he would have unbuckled that seatbelt mid-ride. He honestly seemed insane. So, I know it isn't as scary as some of the ones on here, but seatbelt remover person, let's not meet. The day the creepy painter tried to get in my house. I was reading through all the creepy stories on here and remember something that happened to me as a teenager that I almost forgotten. At least it seemed to fade in and out of my memory quite often, which I find surprising, because it scared the hell out of me when it happened. I was about 15 years old when this happened. It was summer, so I was out of school at the time. My mother was working full-time, and we were living in a trailer that belonged to my aunt and uncle, who was an immediate neighbor, though their house was somewhat behind our trailer rather than directly beside us. Instead, right beside us was a small set of 2 apartments that my aunt and uncle also owned and leased out. It was practically in my front yard with the way things have been set up, and the road was a down-sloping horseshoe, and we lived smack in the bottom of the U. It was a bit isolated, being out in the country. It was a pretty safe neighborhood all in all, and my uncle was a police officer. People think things like that offer extra security, but I just think it's a lie people tell themselves to sleep better at night. Anyways, like I said, it was June, and I was enjoying my summer so far. I spent most of my days sleeping in and being lazy around the house. My mother worked 8 hours a day, so up until about 5 p.m. it was just me and my dog in the house. On this particular morning, I noticed there was a guy outside who was painting the windowsills of the apartment building my aunt owned. My uncle, aunt, and cousins across were all out of town on vacations at the time. I didn't think anything of this really, and saw him moving around and taping and painting most of the morning. Sometime after lunch, I let my dog out to go to the bathroom. I was at the back door waiting for her to finish, when Painter Guy walked around the side of my trailer, stopping when he saw me. He immediately gave me a weird vibe. He was in his 40s and balding, but the hair he had left was all over the place. His eyes looked blurry, confused, and not totally in focus. I figured maybe he was just drunk. I live in the South and plenty of men drink while they work. But I also became immediately worried because I also live in an area notorious for pillheads and drug addicts. He looked super disheveled, and he was wearing boxers and a t-shirt. I couldn't remember what he had been wearing when I first noticed him, but this definitely rubbed me the wrong way. I couldn't think of any accident or mishap that a painter would encounter that would dictate taking off your pants. Upon noticing the guy, standing there all blurry-eyed and minimally swaying, I called my dog and ended up having to go further into the yard to retrieve her, because she stayed in place watching Painter Guy and growling. As I worked to drag her into the house, Painter Guy stumbled up onto my porch and said, "Hey, where's your outdoor toilet?" And that was enough for me. I booked it back into the house, locked my door, and checked all the other doors and windows to make sure everything was locked. I was honestly going to brush it off as a drunk person and let it alone, but I called my mom at work to ask her who it was and if she knew someone was painting her sister's apartments today. While I was on the phone with her, I saw that he was on my back porch rummaging around. After that, he went around to the end of our trailer by the driveway, and I followed inside, looking through the windows to keep track of him. He sat down in our swing and put an old, gross rag that was sitting on it on his head and appeared to go to sleep. My mother suggested I call the cops, and she told me she was on her way home. She had about a 15-minute drive. I hung up with my mom and called the cops, and it was about the perfect time, too. They were on their way and would have someone there shortly, they said. As soon as I got off the phone with them and gave my mom a call on her cell to see where she was, the man on the swing got up. I had hoped he was passed out drunk, and it would be an easy wait for the police. That was not the case, though. The man stumbled away from the porch swing and made his way up to my front porch. At this point, I was scared out of my wits, and I began closing all the mini blinds, checking the doors, double-checking them, and making sure the windows were secured as well. He started screaming and ranting and raving at me. I couldn't understand a word he was saying, and then I heard the doorknob rattle. It sounded like he was going to jerk the doorknob out of the door, and when he finally must have realized it was locked, he started beating on the door insanely, all the while still screaming. He was knocking on the windows, slapping them and beating them. I was sure he was going to break through and had no idea what to do. The only thing I could think of was to grab a kitchen knife. My mother heard the commotion and directed me to call the police back and tell them to hurry. I got them back on the line, and the operator could hear the madness going on outside. She said the police were on their way, on my road even, but even they couldn't find my house. I saw them go by outside and did my best to direct her so she could direct them. I'm still not sure how it was so difficult to get to the bottom of a horseshoe road. My mother actually arrived before the police, tearing into the driveway like a bat out of hell. They noticed this and followed, but she was still quicker. By the time she made it to the front porch, Painter Guy had stopped beating on everything out there and had started swinging on the front screen door like a 5-year-old would. He had his hands on the top, his feet lifted off the ground, and was swinging on it, humming like a creepy fucker he was. My mother approached him and asked him just what the hell he was doing on her porch. His response? "My wife is in there." Totally chilled me and completely freaked me out. The police came up finally, got him off the door, detained him, and started questioning him. From what I pieced together, he thought that I was his wife, and alternately that I was holding his wife hostage, and was wholly dedicated to getting inside the house. After they ran some checks on him, they found he had no wife, had never been married, and had messed up out of his gourd on a mixture of pain pills, alcohol, and who knows what else. They arrested him on a few different charges, and my mom stayed home with me the rest of the day and took the next off as well. Our screen door was bent like crazy. It turned out my aunt had hired him and then gone out of town, so she had no idea what was going on at all. And his work was so sloppy, she had to hire someone back just to come fix it. So, creepy Painter Guy, let's not meet. How I found out someone was living in my house. About a year ago, for the month of June, my family went to France for 4 weeks and left me to tend the house and take care of the animals. My house is an interesting location. It's about an hour from the campus I go to school on, and a 30-minute drive from my work, and 20 minutes from the main town. My neighbors and I have a few acres in between each other, and the closest house to me is a 10-minute drive. My house is surrounded by farmers' fields, military property, and miles of BLM land surrounded by mountains. Sometimes I feel like I live in the house from Courage the Cowardly Dog because of how in the middle of nowhere it is, and how lots of weird stuff happen in it. If you were to Google what a 2-story house looks like, this would be exactly what my house looks like, except it's a 1-story. The second story, where all the windows are, is just ceiling space, There are also lofts in my house where my landlord was going to put the second story, but never got around to it. It's like they tried to build a 2-story house but realized there was nowhere to put the stairwell. There's also a large basement and an attic. I've lived in the house for 8 years, and I've always felt that the house had a weird layout. Next to my room, there was a huge wall that connects to the living room wall, but my room isn't as big as the wall, so there's just a large wall in between the living room and my room. Underneath my room is the stairs to the unfinished basement. Now that you understand the layout of my house, you'd understand why there's lots of birds' nests on the roof. The birds congregate on top of the room during the summertime, because that's when the most bugs are out of them to catch, and because we feed our cat just below. My room acts like a funnel for noise of them scratching on the roof and running around. About 2 weeks after my family left for France, the birds started their scratching noise on top of my roof. They do it every hour or so, all day and all nights. It's a very unsettling sound to hear at 3 in the morning and, honestly, annoying. Then I started to hear scratching and banging sounds coming from the wall next to me, which is why I thought we had rats in our walls. My mom assured me over Skype that it was probably just birds on the roof, like normal. The next few days I keep hearing the scratching noises and the banging sounds coming from my wall. Finally, I decided that it was time to check the closets and the basement for signs of mice or rats so I could buy the proper traps. After checking the basement, I don't find any signs of mice, so I go check the hall closet, which is the only thing in between my living room and my room. It's usually locked because it's full of a bunch of yard tools and my stepdad's shotgun, my archery equipment, and a handgun. It's locked because my youngest brother could seriously injure himself. I assume it's locked, but I still check the handle and it opens. I thought maybe my stepdad unlocked it before they left, in case I needed a gun to protect myself or something. The first thing I noticed when I opened the closet, it's that all the tools are moved to the far side, and a portion of the closet wall is missing. At this point, I freaking fracked the fuck out and called my best friend and her dad to come over and check it out. I thought about calling the police, but since I live far from a lot of things, I figured me discovering a hole in my wall of my closet probably wasn't gonna send them over. My best friend's dad and brother come over and use flashlights to look into the hole. They don't see anything super weird, so my friend's dad gets on his hands and knees and gets into the hole. When he gets out, he has a look of horror on his face and tells us that he found a dirty mattress, a pair of men's-sized jeans, chicken feathers everywhere, and a whole Walmart chicken partially eaten. He calls the police, and they search the whole house and find no one, and nothing out of the ordinary. My friend's dad nails a slab of wood over the hole, and I have all the locks changed. The creepy compartment in my closet has since they've been sealed out. The scary thing is that because I work during the day and leave the house unlocked most of the time, the guy who lived in there could have come and gone as he pleased until night when I was home. I have 8 dogs, which is the reason my family needed me to stay home, and I never heard any of them bark during the time the banging started. Wally World Pedo. Okay, so this happened to me on Tuesday, June 21st. I am a 30-year-old female, but people mistake me for a 14 to 15-year-old girl. My mom recently had knee replacement surgery, so I've been running a lot of errands for her as well as taking her to her physical therapy appointments. Tuesday was my grandma's birthday, and my mom needed me to go to Walmart to buy her the bottle of perfume that she wanted. While I was there, I figured I might as well get the few groceries I needed, and my mom also asked me to pick up some groceries for her as well. Since I had a doctor's appointment earlier in the morning, I decided to go afterwards and go to the Walmart that was closest to that doctor's office. This particular Walmart was newer, being that it was just built almost a year ago, and it was much nicer and less crowded than the normal one I always go to. So I park my car and go inside and grab my buggy and head for the produce section to pick up some veggies for my guinea pigs and whatever my mom asked for. Once I'm finished in that section, I head in the next aisle, which is the frozen food section. As I go to turn in the aisle, I notice this older black man, probably in his late 50s to early 60s, taking glances of me. So I figured no big deal, maybe I just look like someone he knows or something. So I'm in the frozen foods looking for my chicken, and which my mom wants, when this guy comes up alongside me and says, "Hey, you look familiar. Where do I know you from?" I don't recognize him, but I'm maybe thinking he knows someone my sister knows, or possibly he may go to the church my mom goes to. It's a good-sized church, and everyone knows my mom there, and even though I or my sisters don't go there, the people there know us, so I'm thinking maybe it's one of those two options. I tell him that I'm sorry, but I don't recognize him from anywhere, so he asks me what my name is, and I stupidly tell him and say my name is Abby. I did so, because I genuinely thought that he may actually know me, and he wasn't giving off any red flags. Then he says, "That name doesn't sound familiar. What high school do you go to?" I tell him I'm not in high school. He then says, "What's your full name again?" This is when I start getting this feeling that something isn't quite right. And since I've already told him my real first name, there was no way in hell I was telling him my real last name too. So I just said my name is Abby Smith. He says, "How old are you?" So I say I'm 30 years old. At this he looks completely shocked and says, "You're 30 years old? I thought you were about 15. Mind if I call you sometime?" At this I am completely flabbergasted and disgusted, and for the moment at a loss of words. Before I can even respond, he says, "Are you married?" And I say no. At that moment, I could have kicked myself. Why didn't I just say yes, I was married, so this pedo would leave me the hell alone? Then he says, "So you won't mind if I call you sometime then?" This time I managed to pull myself together enough to say that my boyfriend would mind very, very much. At hearing this, he just leaves, walks off without another word, and I'm left there still in shock. A guy thought I was a 15-year-old girl and was trying to get me to give him my number. What the hell? After he left, this elderly lady came up and said, "Honey, are you alright? I was here in the aisle and I heard everything." I told her I was fine, and she said she stayed in the aisle with me until she knew that guy was gone, and there was no way she was leaving me alone with him. She said he was disgusting, and she knew what his intentions were right away when he thought I was just 15. I thanked her very much for not leaving me alone in the aisle, and hurried the hell up and got whatever else my mom wrote on her list. I didn't even get anything else other than the veggies for my guinea pigs. I just wanted to get the hell out of that place. I could always go to the grocery store for myself some other time. What the hell is wrong with people? I mean, really? This old pedo bastard thought it was a good idea to go to Walmart and try to hook up with 15-year-old girls? Dude, seriously. If we ever meet again, I will be on my A game and tear you a new one, you sick asshole. He followed us to another town. When I was between the ages of 18 to 20, my best friend and I loved going to ride around town in her car. We would mostly do this on the weekends, between 9:30 p.m. and 2 a.m. We would just make a constant circle, stopping ever so often get a soda or something. It was always fun. We had long girly conversations, listened to music extremely loud. We just didn't have a care in the world. Little did we know what one night in June 2002 had in store for us. We were driving along like we always did, hitting 4 main busy roads in the city we lived in, and made one giant circle. We were talking about something. The subject slips my mind today. We had Tori Amos playing in the background of our conversations. It was just like any other weekend that we would drive. When we stopped at a light, at an intersection, something in my gut wasn't right. It kind of felt like it dropped. I looked around and didn't notice anyone staring at us, so I just shook it off, thinking that it was about to be 1 a.m. and I was just tired. We decided to drive one more loop and then call it a night. About halfway through our driving, my friend notices in her rearview mirror a small white truck. She said to me, "I don't want to freak you out or anything, but this truck has been following us for the past 20 minutes. I look out my passenger side door mirror and there it was. I told her that it was just probably someone doing the same thing we were, and we continued to chat. After about 5 minutes, he switched lanes and was coming up to my side. I tried so hard not to look over, because that feeling in my gut came back. When I looked, he was flicking his tongue at me, yelling, "Woo, woo, let me get a taste." I turned back to my friend. As I was rolling out my window, I was creeped the hell out. I mean, yeah, I've been catcalled by some guys, but nothing like that. Also, this man was like 50 plus. He started to slow down, way down, when he seen me roll my window up. My friend was saying that she was going to keep driving if he didn't stop following us. We didn't want him to know where we lived either. I know now the smart thing to do would have been to pull into the police station. However, we were young, stupid, and scared. He kept following, so my friend decided to get on the highway, thinking he wouldn't follow, but he did. He stayed in the lane next to us on the left side. He followed us all the way to another town. It was a decent-sized tourist town. We started to run low on gas, so she pulled into this gas station, and me being a quick thinker, and thankfully, there was a guy at the gas pump next to us who looked like he could kick some serious ass, so I walked up to him and said, loud enough for the creeper to hear, "Hey Bubba, Mama's been trying to call your cell phone all night." I gave him the best pleading eyes that I could, and glanced over at the driver in the truck that was now parked behind my friend's car. It worked because the man replied back, "Sorry sis, I was out with a girl. We decided to go to the lake. I'll follow you guys home." With that, the creepy guy paid for his gas and left. I thanked the stranger who helped us, so my friend even paid for his gas too. We left thinking we were safe. We even took some back roads to make sure he couldn't find us again. Once we got on the highway, headed back home, we felt like we could breathe again, because he was nowhere in sight. She drove me straight home and stayed the night, because she was too scared to go home alone. I didn't blame her. 2 weeks went by and we were still going out on the weekends, just driving around. One morning, before I left for work, there was a dozen roses on my doorstep. I assumed they were for my sister because her boyfriend was always doing sweet stuff like that. Until I remember that she was on vacation with her boyfriend. I looked at the note that was attached to the outside. It said, "Pretty girl." I flipped it open and it said, "All I wanted was a taste." I immediately called the cops. I then sent a couple officers out and I gave them the flowers on the note. Caught them up on the whole creepy situation. They looked around my neighborhood and found the truck about 2 blocks away with no one in it. They took down his license plate number and ran his tags. Then a week after, I got a call that they arrested him and wanted to know if I wanted to press charges. I sure did. So, even though I know you're mad, I pressed charges, creepy man. Please let's not meet again. Return of an old stalker. I just remembered this story. I'm 18 years old and due to leave for BMT next Tuesday. This series of events started in my sophomore year of high school, and it makes my blood boil still. In my second term of my 10th grade year, I had to take health. I sat alone for the first few weeks. I had friends in the class, but the table was taken up with other people. Soon, 2 kids sat at the table behind me, and I could tell they were different. I'm not one to be mean. I hate to hurt people's feelings, so I was nice to them. We usually talked about video games. Before I get too into this one, these 2 were high-functioning and knew rights and wrongs. Clark had started sitting next to me during class. It was nice to have someone to talk to, and I was nice to him. However, it got to the point where he was becoming a distraction during class. So I would gather my things and sit on the floor next to my table my friend sat at and do my work. This happened a few more times before that became my actual go-to sitting spot. Clark's friend Hunt would come over to me at least once a week and tell me that Clark wanted me to sit next to him, to which I would always politely decline. Around midterms, he began following me to my classes. We would pass each other in the hall, and he would turn around to follow me. I always stuck around after school, and one day, he was making a phone call to someone and loudly announced it was him, saying he was pissed about something. At this point, I'd had enough and told one of the staff, Coach Johnson, who helped me with all of this. He talked to Clark's mom, and she said to only say hi and ignore him and he'll go away. So that's what I did. He came up to me a few days later to tell me that he liked me. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I made the mistake of saying, "I don't know what to say. I'm flattered, so thank you?" And he kept following me to my next class, proceeding to tell me he has autism. I nodded politely and just went to class. I told the coach and he talked to his mom again, who said to just ignore him completely, so I did. About a month went by with no issues. In June, the school holds a family picnic. I was in the pool and a game of water volleyball was going on and Clark was there. The ball splashed near me. He asked me to give him the ball, still ignoring him. I tossed it to Hunt, who was there with him, and went back to swimming with my friends. Later, after the senior's last day, he spoke to me in the hall. "You're gonna get what's coming to you," he said. He repeated it 3 times as I walked by, before I finally yelled at him, telling him to shut the fuck up. It was the weekend before the last week of school and I was checking my Facebook. I saw that Clark had messaged me, "Hey, hi, hey bitch, I saw you in the hall today. I know you want this D, haha, coming to you, bitch." The account was deleted shortly after. And the next day, me, my mom, and my dad went to the principal to have her help. We showed her the messages and spent a day in there. The coach was on the phone with his mom, who said they were just discussing what they're learning in health. She just kept making excuses, which infuriated my parents. And then she had the coach ask my mom if she wanted to talk over coffee. After that, Clark was expelled, and he posted how much of a bitch I was on Facebook after I blocked him. Then his family moved up to Canada. I cannot hold grudges to save my life, and my boyfriend says that my only flaw is that I forgive too easily. Anyways, it's a year or 2 and it's my senior year. I rarely ever go on Twitter, but I see he followed me and sent me a message. I apologize for taking so long as I never go on Twitter. It's a normal conversation after that. Eventually, he sent me a new friend request on Facebook. I accepted and we talked a bit. In my profile, I was wearing a Wonder Woman bombshell outfit from Hot Topic. This is how the messages went. I love your picture. Thank you. Those curves, though. Are you still a virgin? You look like you gave it away. Yes, I am. That's not something you ask a girl. Sorry. The topic switches to basketball, which I could care less for, but oh well. Stupidly, I didn't delete him. The next day, he went on to tell me he was gonna pull all the girls in college and had said, I got suspended for slapping a girl's ass today. I'm a beast. I told him off for it. A few days later, he said he did it again. I know you're gonna be mad, but I slapped another girl's butt. What the hell? You know how wrong that is? I can't help it. I've been obsessed since 9th grade. I blocked him after that. He should pray I don't see him again. The sidewalk rule. First time posting here, and I chose to start with this story because I recently found some interesting information. I've thought about this incident a lot, and recently decided to look into it and found some unsettling results. It could just be a coincidence, but I think maybe not based on the dates and similarities. Either way, here it goes. It happened on my 8th birthday, June 16, 1993. I've been pestering my mom, like most little kids do, and excited, and she gave me an early present to open, so I would play and she could do things like get ready for the party without me getting in the way. The party was supposed to start in a few hours, and she was still trying to frost the cake. The toy was a Jurassic Park dinosaur, and I took it to the front yard to play. Our house was just off a quiet New England road, and we didn't get that much traffic, but all the same time I wasn't allowed on the sidewalk without my mom's permission. The front yard sat atop a stone wall that was a good 3 to 5 feet above the sidewalk, depending on what part of the lawn one stood. Because of this peculiarity, my mom couldn't see me if I jumped down to the sidewalk, so it was a rule that I always had to ask to play there. Otherwise, it was off limits. It was a well-established rule. I wasn't outside very long when a man in a station wagon stopped on the side of the road. He must have seen the sign and balloons my mom had put out to help people find our house, because though I'd never seen him before, he called me over to wish me a happy birthday. He asked me a lot of questions. Each time I answered, he would ask me to come closer so he could hear me. Each question, he would coast his car closer to the corner of the lawn, where the wall was lowest. He asked me how old I was, how many kids were coming to my birthday party, and if there were any special presents I was hoping to get. I showed him the dinosaur toy I had and told him how much I liked it, and talked about everything I knew about dinosaurs, which at the time was quite a lot. At this point, I was standing right on the edge of the stone wall, at the far corner, where the drop is only about 3 feet to the sidewalk, and he had pulled his car over so far, his wheel was up on the curb. He must have known it was a quiet road, because he clearly didn't worry about getting stopped for his car being on the sidewalk, and though we had been talking for about 5 minutes by that point, no other cars had driven by. I remember feeling really special that a grown-up was paying so much attention to me, and was talking to me like I was a big girl and not just some baby. He told me that I was such a smart and pretty girl. He bet I could come to the sidewalk and help him with something. He asked if I could give him directions to a road that was right up the streets. I told him I only knew the name of the road that my house was on. He had a map sitting in the passenger seat, and picked it up and asked me to come look at it. That didn't matter if I knew the name. He would just read it to me, and I could tell him if he was reading the map right. I knew I wouldn't know the road, but I remember feeling so honored that this grown-up was asking me to help that I probably would have drawn a whole new map if he had asked. I got up ready to jump on the sidewalk and go to the roll-down window he was practically hanging out of, before remembering I couldn't go on the sidewalk without permission. I told him I wasn't allowed on the sidewalk, and I would have to tell my mom. He told me not to bother her, as he was sure she was busy getting things ready for my birthday, and it would only take a second for me to check. I put my toy down and sat on the edge of the wall to climb down when my mom opened the front door. The guy peeled away so fast, I could see the mark on the curb where he had burned rubber. My mom asked what all that was about, and I told her he wanted to wish me a happy birthday and asked for directions. She told me it was time to come inside and play. I'd all but forgotten about the incident, until much later. I told a friend about it. We both concluded that the man was probably attempting to abduct me. So fast forward to about a month ago, it occurred to me to look into abductions around that time in the area. I was able to put together the year based on Jurassic Park's release dates and just look for cases from that summer. I was a bit surprised with what I found. In August, only a few short months after my run-in with this guy, a 10-year-old girl named Holly had been abducted in a town about 20 miles away. She was blonde with brown eyes and I was blonde with blue eyes. They found her shoe on the sidewalk and suspected she had been snatched by someone in a car. Her remains were found in the woods a month or two later. Her killer was never found, and the case remains unsolved to this day. Whether that is just a coincidence or something more, for the random guy in the station wagon over 20 years ago. Let's not meet. Creepy guy asks questions and I see him again. Hello fellow Redditors, long-time lurker, first-time poster. This happened when I was in 7th grade. I'm going to my freshman year this September, so this was a little over a year ago. Every day after school, I walked to a library with a friend or friends. It was about a mile away from the school. This particular day, I was walking with my friend who was a freshman. He was mature and I felt safe with him. I was walking with another girl in my grade, who happened to be somebody who really irritated me, but I was always nice to her, considering the fact that I didn't want to hurt her feelings. She wasn't very street smart, and this will come into play later. My friend and I were walking up ahead of her. Considering we walked fast, she couldn't keep up with us, so eventually, we waited for her to catch up with us, and we walked slower. Now, my friend smoked, so he lit up a cigarette and we continued to walk. About 2 minutes later, we see a guy taking the trash out in front of his house. This guy gives me the absolute creeps, so I try not to look at him. As we get closer to his house, he asks us how our day at school was. The girl that was irritating to me said, "Good, actually," and rambled on about what she did all day. My friend and I tried giving her hints to not talk to this creep and to keep walking, but she just didn't get it. "When's your last day of school?" he said to us, with a look in his eyes that haunts me to this day. Oh, June 30th, the girl says without hesitation. He replies something along the lines of, "Not too far from now." At this point, my friend and I know the fuck out of there. Clearly give her hints not to talk to this man, so we start walking away. She stops talking to him, and she catches up to us. We gave her a lecture as if she was a little kid, and continue to walk to the library, hoping she gets her lesson. Fast forward to 2 weeks later. It's the last day of school. I just finished my last final, and my friend finished his. We were standing outside the school, talking and joking. Now, when I'm not at the library, my mom picks me up from school because it's about a 2-mile from my house, and my mom doesn't want me walking by myself. My heart suddenly stops when I see an old beat-up car approach the parking lot with the same man who was talking to the girl 2 weeks ago and ask when her last day of school was. "Hey kids, do you need a ride?" he asks, smiling at us. My friend and I decline, telling him we both have our rides. He replies to us and says, "Okay, but if you need anything, just walk up to my house," and winks at us. He stares for about 5 seconds and drives away. Afterwards, I called my mom and told her to hurry. Once she picked me up, I told her the whole story. And she comforted me and asked me why I didn't tell her about this creep before. I explained that I thought she was going to get mad at me for that other girl's actions. After 7th grade, I moved. It's a lot better here, and I haven't encountered any creeps so far. I keep in contact with my old friend, who's a junior now. For the girl with no street smarts, not so much. Creepy guy who remembered my last day of school. Let's not meet ever again. Sniffed my hair, then followed me home. This is my first ever post on Reddit, so I apologize in advance if I make any mistakes. This might be slightly long, so I apologize again. A little bit of background information on myself first. I'm a 5'3" blonde 20-year-old female, who actually looks more around 16, and if possibly even younger without my hair or makeup done properly. Unfortunate, I know. Anyways, I attend a night class at my local college, which runs from 6 p.m. until 8:45 p.m. However, we will usually get out early around 8:10 p.m. This one night, I chose to have a slow walk down to the bus station, which is usually around a 5-minute walk, so of course I got there with plenty of time remaining before my 8:30 bus home. So I get to the bus station, walk over to my stand and sit down minding my own business, listening to my music. I look up to see if I know anybody in different stands, when I catch the eye of a tall, oddly pale guy, dressed in matching combat clothing, standing in a couple stands down, which I found rather odd, since we were in a town center, but whatever. People can wear whatever they like. After this, every time I happened to look up from my phone, I found this guy staring straight at me, which I found rather weird, and I was thankful my bus was soon, and I could get away from this creep. Wrong. My bus pulled in early for the first time, like every on a Tuesday afternoon, but I was thankful because I thought I was getting away from this guy giving me creepy eye contact, so I mute my music, but keep my earphones in and get up and head to the line of people waiting to get on, and so does he. I do the polite thing and allow this guy to get on the bus first so I could sit away from him, but instead, he just reaches his hand out gesturing me to go first. Of course, not knowing what to do, I walk onto the bus and sit downstairs, where I knew would get potentially busy. Unluckily for me, this creep sits straight behind me at the back of the bus, not realizing until the bus actually sets off that he was leaning incredibly far over the seats, so his head was practically touching mine. This is when I click on and see his reflection and realize what he's actually doing is sniffing my hair, which at the time was in a messy bun. Completely freaking out for a second, I jolt myself forward, so I'm also leaning straight forward. Thankfully, my bus ride is only around 20 minutes long, so I contact my mom explaining what happened and how this creep is being super weird with me, telling her that if I ring her, then to pick up immediately because he's followed me from the bus. At last, my stop comes around. I wait till the very last second to press the button and get up to see if he would follow me. I jump up from my seat. Unfortunately, so does he. Completely freaked out, I scramble for my phone, and almost in tears by this point, I ring her and simply say, "It happened," sped off the bus, followed by a super creep. I practically spring to the back of the bus and just walk straight out onto oncoming traffic. Walking as fast as I can without making it obvious or actually running, I walk as fast as my little legs would allow me, thinking how thankful I was for living a mere 5 minutes away from the stop, even though at this particular moment it felt like forever, and I just wanted to get home and away from this guy. He caught up pretty fast for the speed I was walking, kicking items such as bottles to let me know he was still behind me. I think I actually pooped myself a bit from fear, but I just kept walking as I was at the bend near the start of my street when I ran across the road to see my mom waiting at the end of my street. Waiting. This guy was now parallel to me on the other side of the road, just walking along, staring at me, while keeping dead in line with me. I caught up to my mom and stopped, explaining as quiet as possible that that was the guy who followed me. However, as I stopped, so did he, and he just stood there watching me with my mom. Of course, my mom being my mom did the exact same thing, despite the fact that she's not at all in any way, shape, or form intimidating. Eventually, he carried on walking, and the second we were out of his sight, we ran as fast as we could around our corner, into our house, locked the windows and doors behind us. I didn't report it until a couple days later, when I found a young lass had also been followed earlier that night. Can you bear in mind this was a while back ago, and a couple of weeks ago I saw on a local news about a guy dressed in matching combat sexually assaulting young women. I'm glad I was this lucky. Let's not meet Mr. Creepy Combat Man